Good morning to all of those of you out there who are able to join us. We are ready to get this panel discussion started this morning. Before we do, I think just wanted to turn over and first of all, thank you all for making the time this morning. And to thank the sponsors. Is there another slide, please? Really, without the generous sponsorship, Iowa and many other associations like this couldn't do this important work. So many thanks certainly to GE Aerospace and Condon Foresight for their sponsorship for this event and for their ongoing sponsorship of the International Aviation Women's Association. Again, I'm Dee Reimold. I'm currently the acting deputy vice president for the FAA's flight program operations. We're a part of the air traffic organization in the FAA, and I'm joined today by several of my colleagues who work in flight program operations to talk to all of us about their journeys, their careers. Before I have the opportunity to introduce the panelists today, just a couple of notes, and we're going to get into it in the course of the discussions. Many people don't know that the FAA does in fact have a fleet of aircraft. And we use those aircraft to conduct flight inspections, checking to make sure that the equipment and the procedures that are in place in the National Airspace System are operating effectively. We also support critical research and development activities, kind of testing out things to make sure they're operating as envisioned. And then we also provide a very important function across the U.S. government by providing transportation for the National Transportation Safety Board and FEMA and others in times of disasters or other critical events. So, you know, it's a pretty broad portfolio. And, you know, by FAA perspectives, a smaller organization, but a very dynamic and a very innovative organization, as you're going to hear. What's been really rewarding about being in this role for the last 6 months certainly has been getting to know the people in the organization and what they do. But it has been just, as you know, from my personal perspective as a longtime Iowa member and board member, to realize just the significant roles that women play in this organization. And you're going to hear from our pilots today, including our chief pilot, Lori Faber, about, you know, the work that they do. And also, we wanted to make sure everyone on this call knew that we had a first just a week or two ago, in that we had an all-female crew conduct one of our missions. So huge thing, particularly in light of Women's History Month, but more importantly, just in light of the continuing advances that women are making across the aerospace industry. So I promise I'm done talking. I've had a lot of coffee already this morning. Again, I mentioned we're joined today by Lori Faber, our chief pilot and the flight program operations, by Beth Ann Senk as our aviation safety training group manager, by Elideth Hernandez, a mission specialist with flight program ops, and Jennifer Porter, flight inspection pilot with our organization. Thank you all so much for making the time. I know there's so much going on in your lives, and I just really appreciate that you all were able to make the time. Sophie, my friend, thank you for agreeing to moderate. So I'll turn it into your capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dee. Thank you today for joining us. You've been joined by these amazing 4 ladies. Their bio is on the website. Please make sure to go over it and see what they've done to get to where they're at now. And I'll start my question today with Lori. So please let us know what attracted you to aviation, what kept you in the field, and why flight program operations.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here first and foremost, and good morning to everyone out there. First, I guess I get to tell you my attraction began when I was a senior in high school, and a girlfriend of mine, she had her father loved to rent airplanes, and I was contemplating colleges of where to go to school. So he took me up for a flight, and from there I was pretty much hooked. And with that, I proceeded on to go to the U.S. Air Force Academy. I was very fortunate. I didn't know at the time, but they did not recruit women necessarily to fly, but to meet a minimum quota. And at the time, I was fortunate enough to have great eyesight and statutes that I managed to qualify to go to Air Force flight training. I still had restrictions then because we didn't have the combat laws, but I pretty much took advantage of every opportunity I had. I flew, actually, I started in planes, moved into helicopters, and through that I have pretty much got to fly all the way around the world and do many, many things. I pretty much ended my active duty career up in Anchorage, Alaska. And with that, I met an FAA FSDO individual who also was part-time in the unit. And he basically convinced me to join the FAA, in which case at that point I interviewed and actually came in via aircraft certification as a human factors specialist, worked with the flight test group. And by basically working when coordinating with a lot of research, I got asked to check out some research facilities up at the FAA Technical Center in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And from there, our pilot retired and they asked if I was interested in joining their team, and I did. And that was back in September 2001. So basically, I've been in the agency since 1998, and here it is 2023. And I consider myself the most fortunate woman in the world because I could not believe I am still flying, let alone running our wonderful organization.
That's quite a journey you've been around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Beth, how did you get into aviation?
So I grew up in a pilot household. My dad was in the Air Force and then retired from United Airlines after 35 years with the airline. So it was, I'm not sure if it was natural, but it was certainly, I was exposed to it very, very early on and started flying when I was 16. And went through college, got into flight instructing, and found my place in ab initio training programs. I worked for ATCA Lufthansa, and then spent half the year on loan to the 3rd German Air Force Training Squadron, teaching the German Air Force students. Very, very lucky, had no plans on going to the FAA at all. And I had a friend at the FSDO who said, you really should be interested in being interested. And so I kind of thought about it and said, well, okay, and was kind of at a crossroad trying to redefine what success looked like. I wasn't quite sure that air carriers were where I wanted to be. I knew I loved flying. I loved working with the flying public and having that community around me. And this was a wonderful opportunity coming to the FAA. And I, like Lori, have been so blessed. I've had great mentors, great folks to help guide me in this, to give me opportunity. And I just feel lucky to be here. But it was certainly never on my radar, but it did take that moment in that headspace to think maybe success always isn't an airline pilot. Maybe there's other things that we can do and take our gifts and our need to build a community and have impact in aviation and still stay connected, but not necessarily have to leave for 4 or 5 days at a time and run that lifestyle.
That's nice. Well, that risk paid off, I'm sure. Yeah. You, Jennifer?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I got into aviation a little bit differently from most people. I was not interested in it as a kid, could not have cared less. But when I came to Alaska to go to university, about halfway through college, I was a history and Japanese major, and I needed an elective, and I was sick of writing papers, and private pilot ground school was open. So I thought, well, let's give that a shot. And it turned out it was really interesting. It was really fun. I loved the class. So I decided to give flying a try. And interestingly, private pilot was okay. You know, it was pretty to fly up here, but I didn't have any career ambitions with it. And then when I started my instrument rating, just, you know, for safety where I fly, that was it. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And so that's really what kind of drew me into it. And then I just sort of kept going with training. And I became a flight instructor up here in Alaska for a couple of years. And then I worked with the university that I went to. And we worked with the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. They came over, sent folks over, and I taught them a lot of our avionics systems that they were using over there at the time called Capstone. And then I moved to Japan and I lived there for 3 years, partially doing that and somewhat teaching other things. And then I came back and I got on with a 121 operator here in Anchorage. And I flew through them for 9 years. I was also their director of training for several years. So I taught a lot of ground schools. And I worked in the focal program and the ASAP program, all kinds of different things. Any opportunity I could, I became a flight attendant. And so after about 9 years, I liked it, but kind of like Beth Ann said, you know, the next step was going to be airlines, and I didn't really want that lifestyle necessarily. I enjoy being home with my family and my dog. And the FAA had offices up here. So I joined the Anchorage FSDO as an aviation safety inspector. And I was with them for a couple of years. And then I moved over to the Denali Certificate Management Office working on 121 operators. And I oversaw training programs for MD-80 aircraft. And did that for a couple of years as well. And then Lori and her folks were nice enough to offer me a job in flying. So I actually moved over in January to flight operations. And I'm doing training and stuff now to become a flight inspection pilot here.
Great background, great roundabout. It's nice. And Ellie, you have a really different background, your typical American dream life that you fulfilled. Could you please tell us about how you got here and your attraction to aviation?
Yes, good morning. Ellie Hernandez. I started my passion for aviation since I was like probably born, because I always wanted to be a pilot. Unfortunately, you know, coming from Colombia as an immigrant was a little bit difficult. So I started to go the technical route. When I came to the United States, I got the opportunity to go to a technical school in Queens, New York called Aviation High School, where I graduated with an A&P license. And then I went forward to going to college. I started going from a bachelor's degree in avionics, and I attended a career fair there, which I met great people from the FAA at the time. And they told me about a CTI program that gave opportunities to students like me to join the FAA. Since I started most of my career in aviation, in the technical field, I got hired as a navigational communication technician into LaGuardia Airport, where I worked there for a few years. I got transferred over to San Diego for a few years, came back to New York. Same, I got promoted to run, I was a coordinator for JFK Airport. I did that for a few years, but I always wanted to fly. And since I started at LaGuardia, I knew that they had a flight check program that I always wanted to be part of. So I knocked on a lot of doors. It took me a few years because I'm not prior military and I don't have flying experience. However, people such as Lori gave me a great opportunity to join the program. I'm not a pilot. I'm hoping to be one day, but I am the crew member in the back that makes sure that checks all the airports, all the signals that, you know, generate from the aircraft. I'm the person in the back, the little person doing all the magic, telling the pilots that, you know, if the approaches are good, the facilities are good. And I really enjoy working with the pilots, and I learn a lot every day.
Okay, great. And everybody seems to be giving Lori credit here. That's great. So tell us, Dee mentioned that the FAA has their own flying department. Not a lot of people know about that. Even I, as a commercial pilot, was asking you some questions that were a bit too pilot-centric. So could you please tell us what flight program operation is? And you said you fly both nationwide and worldwide. So can you tell us a bit about what it looks like and all the different sections of this program?
Sure, I'll start off and then I'll probably hand to the rest of the team here. But basically the flight, pretty much as Dee began, flight program operations is a culmination of aircraft, and we're located basically nationwide, from Atlantic City, DC, Atlanta area, Oklahoma, Fort Worth, Battle Creek, and Sacramento, and Anchorage. We are combined, the biggest mission we have is flight inspection. Basically, we are responsible for flight checking, as the slang term is called, all the nav aids, as well as all the lighting, and at all the airports pretty much across the nation. A lot of their approach procedures are involved in all of that. And there's even radar commissioning as well. We have a small research and development. It's mostly based out of the FAA Technical Center. And basically the whole deployment, a good example is the deployment of ADS-B, a little bit of the GPS interference testing, and probably the most known critical stuff is the 5G flights that have been going on today with the protection of the radar altimeters. The other part is the critical response. That's mostly supported by our DC, basically our DC unit out of Washington, Reagan there. They basically, whenever FEMA or NTSB needs a hurry ride to go do a response, we are the ones that usually pick that up and go fly out there. Probably our claim to fame is the recent stuff that happened in East Palestine, Ohio, and as well as the hurricane relief down and taking FEMA down there into Florida when that hit in Southwest Florida. And then I would like to share this with Beth Ann, because she's in charge of the aviation safety training at Alliance.
So yeah, I'll carry on what Lori said. What I do down here at Alliance is a little different than Lori's mission in the organization. So we have in flight standards, FAA flight standards, your operations inspectors, and they have to remain current and proficient in aircraft and keep their currency up so that they maintain connection with their operators, with the flying public. So what my organization does is all of the flying FAA operations inspectors come down to my facility, and we have a standard set of profiles in our aircraft down here. And we've got King Airs and R-44s, Bell 206s, PA-44s, 172s, and we offer them both a formal training courses and their currency flying that's done out of Alliance. Now, there are some inspectors that have very specialized aircraft that we don't offer. We don't offer gliders or seaplanes down here at Fort Worth. But what we do is we manage a rental program. So we will go and work with the vendors across the nation and make sure that they have, they're either on a 135 or Part 141 school. And we work with the local FSDOs to get inspections completed. And then we allow and manage the inspectors to go out and get their currency in those specialized aircraft. And our role is more of an operational control role. So we will make sure that they are dispatched. We'll keep track of their risk scores as we look at things moving in, whether it's weather or are they tired? Did they travel? Have they already flown today? All of those factors in order to support the flying public and the flight standards participants in our flight program down here.
Okay. So how many airplanes do you have? And Jennifer, you said you're training to become a pilot back with them. So how is it going to be different for you from the commercial side of it?
So no passengers is the biggest difference from what I used to do. So for me, this will be a very different type of flying experience, and I'm still learning a lot about what flight inspection does. But you know, airline type stuff, a lot of it is just point A to point B, and you know, the same places, the same routes over and over again. And part of what I think is really interesting about this job is you're going to get to go, as Lori said, all over the world potentially. You know, I'm in Alaska, so I've most of my flying career is up here, but I haven't been to loads of places. So I'll get to see all kinds of new airports in my home state, as well as down in the lower 48, and then, you know, over to Asia and the Pacific, perhaps. And instead of back and forth and, you know, passenger shuttling and stuff like that, we're getting to check all of the equipment that allows airlines to go safely into these locations. So it's a really interesting concept to me and a new and fun type of flying.
Great. And Ellie, you mentioned that you're the crew behind doing everything. So flight program operation is mission driven and performs 4 missions. Can you tell us what your involvement is in these missions? And Laurie, it would be great if you tell us what those 4 missions are. Or maybe we'll start with Laurie and then Ellie will tell us
That's
exactly.
fine.
what
So,
it is. Yeah.
Sure, as I was mentioning earlier, so we have the main mission is, or I say the bulk of our fleet, which is, by the way, comprised of King Airs, Challengers. They're probably the big combination. Our King Airs are 300s as well as a couple of C90s. We have Challengers 605s and a couple of 601s. We also have basically, so that's mostly the flight inspection fleet, at the bulk of it. We have mostly for research and development, which is the other mission, we use our Global 5000 predominantly, but we also do use the King Air 300 on occasion. And then for critical response, the main airplane located in DC is the Cessna Citation Sovereign. But again, we use our Challengers and the Global to back it up. So all our airplanes are, I like to say, even though we're about women in diversity, I like to think of all the missions and all the things that we do at Flight Program is diversity. We are multi-mission capable, whether it be with people or with planes. That is the beauty. So if you like diversity, which I'm assuming everybody here does, and don't want it to be the same thing every day, we are the organization to do that. And Ellie can talk a little bit about the diversity of flight inspection for you.
Yes, well, I'm a mission specialist, so my main job in the back is to plan for them each week when we get to fly. We plan for the mission. We get different airports and different facilities, different types of inspections. Not every day is the same. We get daytime flying. We also, because my office is located in Atlantic City, we get to do a lot of the core 40 airports, such as like New York, LaGuardia, Kennedy, DC. And those missions are completed during the at night because of the impact it has on air traffic. So we try to minimize that. And then basically from my duties in the back is to verify all the operation of the equipment. I used to be a ground nav tech, so for me, I get the best of both worlds because I used to work on the equipment on the ground, and now I get to inspect it on the air. So that definitely benefited me a lot to understand both sides of the FAA, because a lot of people don't get the opportunity I had to be a ground tech, and sometimes you understand what those guys are. So I share that experience with the pilots so they could understand what they're doing on the ground, and we work very well together.
Well, and you're on your way to being a pilot, so you would have it all soon, I hope.
Oh yeah, hopefully. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so as a pilot, Laurie or Jennifer or Beth, what questions do you have that make you what qualities do you have that makes you an effective leader? You must be a strong leader to be a pilot, so.
I could start that off. First of all, you have to have a passion and a vision. So, and people may look at flying as fun, but I actually always compare it to playing sports. You have to have a plan in your head, and you have to be able to communicate that, especially if you have team players, which in our case, we fly as a crew of 2 or 3, if depending, because like I said, we have Ellie as a mission specialist. So you have to be able to coordinate and communicate. You also have to think about your partners on the ground, such as air traffic as well, and the techs that are working, or whatever the mission is, if they're engineers for research and development, whether you're doing best work too, which is, they're flying for the first time together. So that's about, again, basically being effective by communicating properly, talking about the plan and the vision and the goals of the flight. Those are all the basics of leadership in my view. That is what's going to make you successful.
And I'll tack on everything Laurie said, but I think another thing I see in flight ops, which is our superpower, I look at this panel of women we have up here, and that is our ability to create a community. and a sense of family around the mission. Obviously, we are really mission driven, just like Lori said. Communication, we worry about our folks, but we really love the sense of community, that we are, we're all the same goal. We want the same thing. How we get there may be a little different, or how our thoughts are. But that really is our superpower in flight ops.
Yeah, I think a third thing to add is that being willing to be open to new experiences, and then to use those to inform whatever your current job or mission is really important. Listening to all of us here, we've got very different backgrounds, but a lot of experiences, a lot of unique experiences that we've had, and taking those opportunities, now that so many of them have become open to us, is really important, because the more you can add, the stronger you can be as a leader in your field.
Beth, you mentioned community and family, creating that around you. But talking about family outside of work, how do you kind of find work-life balance that works for you? And what has the FAA allowed you to make that happen, work for you?
So thank you for the question, Sophie. Work-life balance is important to all of us. And that was part of my decision to come to the FAA, was trying to imagine what my trajectory would be, what it would feel like to juggle a family. And how do you do that? And so I decided this step was best for me. I've had 2 kids since I've been at the agency, and feel very lucky to have had them at the agency. That the FAA in general has been hugely supportive of being a working mom. We've got flexible schedules. We've got a great sick leave and vacation bank that you can accrue. It's probably the best work-life balance I could have ever asked for. And it was a draw. It really was a draw to me to be home on the weekends, unless there was something fun that I got to go do. And sometimes I was gone, but those were my choices. And it has really allowed me to stay engaged in aviation and yet be present at home when I need to be at home. And wonderful support throughout the agency. It has been just a wonderful adventure the last 16 years here.
Oh, you've been there 16 years. Great. Okay, so Lori and Ellie, have you ever been on a critical event response? Can you describe the FAA's role in those types of missions?
Lori?
Ellie, yeah.
Well, obviously, I was recently on the 5G missions that went on, to give awareness for those on board if you're not. So the 5G deployment from the telephone companies are on the same frequency as the radar altimeters are in most cockpits out there. And the concern was, and it began with the airlines, that the deployment of this type of telephone service and internet wave activity would cause interference, and especially when they got low to the ground, or if they do adverse weather conditions, they needed to help them land all the way to the surface due to fog. It would intervene with the radar altimeter. So that was probably the most recent for me on a critical response that I've been on, where we had to quickly work together with our partners in Spectrum to basically figure out how to configure an airplane and gather data across the country, and eventually work with the telephone companies and how to collect this data and eventually prove that this was going to be safe for air passenger travel. And this happened in a matter of weeks. That's how fast of a response that was. So that was probably for me, that was the most critical part, and also the type of flying. So for this scenario, we had to get very close to the surface. In fact, we had to advertise it when we went out to California, where probably based on a large population of people who would utilize streaming services more so than the average small town. We'd have to get low to try to collect this data, because we were trying to see, how much of a demand on the system it was. We were as high as 200 feet off the surface, and being in the LA Valley is pretty, it was fun for me, but I'm sure for those in the houses, it wasn't. So we basically had to advertise to the public that this was going on so that they, wouldn't be fearful or upset about noise and pick a time of day. But we made that all happen, and it's been hugely successful. I like to think right now that we have basically helped make a safer sky. Obviously, this is still a work in progress. Every day we learn more about the system, which to me is the most fun about doing this job, is you're contributing to something bigger than yourself. So, I'm not trying to downplay flying for the airlines. We obviously fly a lot of different maneuvers close to the ground at times, but the bigger picture for me is we are improving the NAS, making it safer. I walk away and I feel like I've made a difference. Ellie, you could probably talk about one of your responses when it was for accident investigation.
Yes, I was part of the crew that was tasked to go to the inspection after an accident. Usually we have to go as one of our parties to go there, and we check the equipment. In that situation, it was the ILS to that runway, and we did the inspection, and we found that the alignment for that localizer was out of tolerance completely. And it was really not due to the equipment itself, but the amount of snow on the antennas that generate that ILS to basically failed. And then my crew, quickly respond there. We got back, we did the report to make sure that, it was not a matter of service, and that no other aircraft will be able to use it and maintain the safety of the airport.
That's great. So you mentioned investigations. So do you collaborate with the NTSB when you do these inspections, or you do it on your own?
So our job is basically, we have another department, just called a policy group. The recordings that I collect in the back, I usually upload to a website that we have that it's for the FAA, and we generate a report. Everything, all the parameters of the values I gather are uploaded into this database, and then they get sent over to the policy group that they're the ones that work with other entities to coordinate that.
Okay, great. And I was going to ask, how do you contribute to keeping the NAS safe for flying public? But Lori already responded it. So you make this position very attractive. So where should someone start if they were looking to be a mission specialist or a pilot at the FAA? Well, Jen, you're the newest one to the group, so.
Well, I mean, for me, I had already worked for the FAA, which was very fortunate. And a lot of it, I think, is if you're already in the agency, making contacts within it. But otherwise, outside of it, events like this are really important because, yeah, you probably don't know we exist otherwise. So networking is really, really great. And there are lots of different organizations that you can get involved with. There are job fairs that you can go to. And I would say just try to put yourself out there as much as possible. If you go to a job fair and you see a booth that says FAA, don't be afraid of us. Come up and say hi. We're actually all pretty nice. And, the more folks you meet, the more opportunities you can develop for yourself.
Okay, well, you said booth. And what are the best resources of people who want to know more about flight operation programs or the FAA? So what are the best resources other than like online or something?
Well, I think at the end, we're going to give you one of our pamphlets, and it has our QR code. Not to push it, but that's what I'm trying. And there, in fact, in the chat right now is the website. So please, we are open to anyone and everyone, and we welcome, and all of us, I must talk to 20 people a day about this. So we're always on the hunt, and we are definitely hiring.
Okay, so from your perspective, what is the biggest or most common misconception about women in aviation? Well, I think I can talk to it from both sides. When I say that, the misconceptions I think for women is, and a little bit that Beth addressed, is that you can't have a family.
And I, like Beth, I have a son. I went through all of that as well. So I think everything is balanced, and the beauty of this, like I said, this position is that everybody here is supportive. And I have spent my career working with mostly men, and I would tell you that my time here has been the most amazingly supportive group of individuals, that have welcomed me, and as well as my son, and my husband, and everything else that goes with it. So I think everybody cares about everybody. So it is a little family. It is definitely true. And that is one of the, I think the biggest misperceptions is that it's, because of the travel, it makes it tough. And I will tell you that this assignment will definitely accommodate as much as they can.
Yeah, and I think I want to add to everything Lori said about the balance here at the agency. I think also the misconception is if you're not at an air carrier, maybe you're not as good as everybody else, and there's only one place for you in aviation. And that is absolutely a lie we tell ourselves. We have wonderful maintainers in our organization. We've got pilots, our support staff, our policy and comms group. You don't have to go out and fly the airplane every day to stay engaged in aviation and to make a difference for our mission. There are a wealth of opportunities here, and it doesn't always require medical, and maybe there's a different path. Ellie had a different path than I had, Jen different than Lori, and we have just a wonderful group behind the scenes that support us, and they are the backbone of the organization. Our admin staff is just amazing. I know in my organization out at Alliance Airport, we'd be lost without my admin staff. So there's always this wide range of opportunities, and success doesn't always mean bars on your shoulders walking through an airport.
I would like to add that in my situation, for instance, for me, it's always been difficult being a woman in the technical field. I think a lot of people in the technical field, like women, can't do the job, especially because I'm only 5'1" tall. And I'm like, when I started the agency, I was 99 pounds. So a lot of people probably didn't think I could pick up a toolbox. And, I had to prove myself, I think, even to my family, coming from where I come from. Aviation is mostly like a male job. So, I had to also prove to my family that women can do it, and, that we have the same opportunities, and if we have the same drive to do it, the job, we can do the job.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've experienced that kind of that fits this is that, sort of what everyone else has said is throughout my various experiences, whether it's flight instruction or, airline flying, and then most definitely here at the FAA and various positions, the amount of support I've gotten is pretty great. Nobody talks about me as the girl pilot or the girl inspector. I am a pilot, I am a safety inspector, and I'm part of the group. And that's, I suspect, a really nice change for, from women who sort of broke ground for us that are all here now. Is I haven't had any issues. It's been a really, really great place to work, which is why when there's so many opportunities in aviation now, in commercial, it's why I choose to stay here.
Okay, well, I think we have about 10 minutes before we open from the floor for Q&A. I have one question for all of you to wrap it up. And I'm happy that this is all happening the last week of Women's Month in March. So really, this is great. So if today's audience walked away from this panel and did one thing because of our conversation, what would you want that to be? I'll start with Lori, Beth, Ellie, and Jen.
Well, this is where I get to do my pitch. The first thing, if you don't have a pilot's license or have a pilot's license and want to actually join our team, we do have, and it's a pilot development program. We have decided based on recruitment that we are going to train our own if we have, and eventually it'll be out there. It's working its way through before the end of the year. So please, my answer is you're never too old and you're never too late. So always go out, and if it's something you wanted to always do, please pursue it. And we will, like I said, we're opening that opportunity coming out. So I'd like to present that to everybody.
So a pilot training run by the FAA to be employed for the FAA.
That is correct.
Okay, good to know. I'll pass it on. Beth.
So I think to Lori's point about the pilot development program, I think I'd want everybody to walk away knowing that just because you didn't do the normal path, that it doesn't mean you're less of a success. Give yourself some space to think about where you want your trajectory to go and how you define success, and redefine success, because I can guarantee all of us have redefined what success looks like multiple times in our career. And just give yourself permission to think, well, maybe, what about? And, you know, I really love this, but I don't want these drawbacks to a job. We've got wonderful opportunities. So give yourself some space to think about what matters most. And you can still come to flight program operations and have your hand on the pulse of aviation and make a difference in our mission. And you have a vision set out for you and a wonderful support system. So I would think walking away, just give yourself permission to redefine what success might look like and just go explore.
Redefine your own success. I like that, Beth. Thank you. And Ellie?
Yes, I would recommend everybody to do their research on the different programs as well. Like I said, I came up through a CTI program that was given in a career fair. So people that are in college or maybe not necessarily in the FAA, they could go out to these schools because they have those programs available, and that's a very good path to come into the agency. And also, if you are in the agency, to get familiar with all the aviation jobs in the FAA, because a lot of people, like when I was in Tech Ops, they're not familiar with what we do in flight check. So that would be one of my advice, to get familiar with all the jobs out there.
So seek out the opportunities that are out there because they're there.
Correct.
Good. And Jen?
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd say is just to broaden your experience, because every opportunity that is available to you, you never know down the line what that's really going to do for you. You know, you may not be interested in instructing, but somebody offers you the chance and you take it, and now that's where you really learn something, is when you have to teach it. And then who knows 10 years later how that will affect you. And so any opportunity that's out there that you can take it. I used to fly around here 10 years ago listening to Flight Check out there and think, oh, that would be a really neat job. And never did I think that I would have the opportunity to do it. But here I am. You know, the FAA wasn't a bucket list, and I joined it and I love it. And now I'm at Flight Check. So everything you can do to really to broaden your experience and really diversify yourself and your knowledge is really important.
Okay. Don't miss out on opportunities. That's great. Really, this has been really an honor to be interviewing you and getting to hear all your stories and how there are all these opportunities out there in aviation for women, and we can have them all. Michelle, I think there are a couple of questions, and I would really appreciate it if you ask them. And this, I'm opening the floor for Q&A from our attendees. And I'm happy to say that we're 56 for a notice that just came up this week. That's a great show. So really, our audience really appreciate you coming on such a short notice. Michelle?
So good morning. There are currently no questions in the chat, but we would like to invite the audience to ask any questions that they might have. We are getting some comments. I'd like to read those if that's okay. Amber Cole said she loved hearing all of the stories. She has also faced a similar and was happy to find a home in human factors in aviation. Even just the interest of aviation truly opened up some doors. We got another comment from Michelle saying, Jennifer, great point. As a former teacher, that's so true to teach the information that will help share your knowledge. We did get a question. I apologize for the name, Meredith Simmons. What is a book you read recently that you would recommend for young professionals? I'd like to open that up to anyone who's going to answer.
I can kick that off. I think the most recent one I read that I wish I had 15 years ago is Atomic Habits. And I thought it was wonderful. And I thought if we could get half of the young folks I know to read that, what a blessing that would be. So that one spoke to me.
Beth, do you mind putting it on the chat?
Nope, I can do that. I don't mind at all.
Thank you.
This was a little different. Of all people, it was my son who found this, and I was part of his 7th grade literature. But the Diary of Amelia Earhart, it impressed me a lot because I couldn't fathom, knowing what I know about aviation now, and how she knew nothing but except for by instinct. And I thought about how scary that must have been, but she was so professional just reading it all the way through. So it made me realize that the importance of believing in yourself. And that would be my takeaway for everyone. Just focus on the craft and stay on track, stay in that moment is always what I bring up to people all the time. Do the best job that you're in at the moment.
All right, don't be run off by the name of this next book I'm going to tell you. It's called The Killing Zone. But it's a really interesting book for aviation stuff. And although it's sort of based on your first 100 hours as a pilot, and then 100 hours to 1,000 hours is really where it focuses on. And it talks about the very steep increase in accidents during that 100 to 1,000 hour period. What I sort of have taken away from it over time is that every time you start something new, you're really in a learning phase for a while. And we all go through a point where we scare ourselves a little bit, but this can be whether you're in your first 100 to 1,000 hours, or you start a new job, or you check out on a new airplane or in a new position. And so I think it's really important to remember that while you're in learning phase, really soak up everything you can from the folks around you, whether it's the person sitting next to you, the person in the back, the people on the ground doing weather checks for you. It's a really good learning book for how to sort of approach transitions in your career.
Yes, and I would recommend a book called Latinas in Aviation.
Oh.
I am a Latina and I'm very close to my roots. I'm very proud of my roots. So I definitely was interested in that book to see maybe that other women I could connect with that have similar experiences like me. So I definitely recommend that book.
Great. Okay. Thanks. We see another question.
Yep, we sure do. The next question is, what is the #1 challenge you have faced as women in the aviation industry? We can start with Jen.
I would say, as far as actual challenges, I've been very fortunate in that I've worked with great people. I've had great instructors, great assistants. So I would say this is less of a challenge and more of just kind of amusing thing in the airlines, where I was regularly asked if I was a flight attendant. And after I flew the plane and people saw me flying the airplane, they would ask if I was learning to fly airplanes. So it's more of just, I think, keeping a sense of humor about a lot of folks' just perspective of you. It's not necessarily harmful. They don't think that you're incapable. It's just kind of a surprise to see women in a lot of these leadership roles, pilots, mission specialists, so on. So I've been very, very fortunate in my career that I haven't had huge challenges to get over. It's just been more of a learning curve. You learn your airplane, you learn your industry, but folks have been great here for me.
Right. How about Beth?
So I think for me, my dad used to tell me growing up, Air Force pilot, airline pilot, and when those struggles would come up being a female in aviation, and he would say, dear, what you look for, you will find. And that's always kind of rung in my head. And I think the greatest challenge that I've seen in myself and the community of female aviators that I've known for many years is sometimes we get in our own way. And that voice in our head has more value than it really needs. So I would encourage folks to keep that voice in check, get somebody in your world that can help give you a good foundation. But I think that's been the number one challenge is getting in your own way and letting that voice that may not be so true reign true for those moments in your own head.
Thank you. Ellie?
I think for me is I would say getting to the goal that I want to get to. For example, every so often I give myself a goal that I want to achieve. So that's a challenge on itself for me. Like currently my next goal would be to become a pilot, and that's where I'm going to focus on. And that's a challenge that I would face for myself. And I think I work with other women just to set goals for themselves and then achieve them.
Great. All right.
I would probably say there is no one way to get there. And I go back to my other phrase, which is stay in the moment. There is a lot, I can echo all three comments. There's a lot of things that get in your head and a lot of things that people say. You're not walking in their shoes, you're walking in your own. And you have to decide what is it you want. And then that has to be your focus and do the best job that you're doing at the moment. And the noise will go away. That is just honestly the comment I tell that all the time is people ask me, oh, when are you going to do this or that? And I was like, I have to worry about right now. That doesn't mean I don't want to plan, or your plan may take a detour. Sometimes that detour is the best thing that ever happened to you. So you have to really enjoy yourself along the way and give yourself that moment to relax and realize it's going to be okay.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions in queue. Do you have any young advice for young aspiring pilots when it comes to college and further education? From Myra. I think any of the panel members.
So I can give you only the advice that my father gave me, and it's probably not too popular, but he said, do not go get an aviation degree. Now, I'm not sure if that's valid or not, but the perspective is very, very important to keep in mind. And his goal was to provide a vehicle for success, no matter what happens in aviation. It doesn't mean I got a business degree. If you don't get an aviation degree, doesn't mean you love flying any less. The goal was to become more well-rounded. What that means for you in college could mean an aviation degree. It could not mean an aviation degree. But think about where you want to end up and making sure that you are as well-rounded in a volatile industry as you could possibly be.
Yeah, aviation has really been volatile, so making sure that you have the backup would be great.
I would actually go one step further in my mind, and I agree with everything Beth said. I would we'll definitely get the education. Don't sacrifice it, but study what's going to make you happy would be the first thing I would say. So because I can't tell you from all I'm just short of a doctorate, all the stuff I've used along the way that I never thought I would ever see to use again. So believe me, I mean, even from English lit to, to different levels of science, it comes back. So I would definitely say take advantage of any ounce of education you can get, because you're gonna see it again, just not when you least expect it. I will honestly tell you that. And right now is probably the best time if you are interested in aviation. I'm assuming that's why everybody's here, because the world is your oyster right now. We were the big baby boomer generation retiring every day. The need is there and the opportunities are endless. So I definitely, if this is your dream, you are right in the right time in your life to do it.
We just have one more question. Does your organization have remote workers?
Absolutely is the answer to that question. We believe, like I said, we believe in quality of life, and we definitely are a giant telework community. Obviously, I mean, and if you're in the plane, there, you know, that is part of the process.
I've got one more comment. We've gotten several comments about how wonderful the session was. The last one here says, I truly have enjoyed attending the session and hearing stories of such strong women in aviation. As a female pursuing a degree in human factors, it's a pleasure to learn more about the FAA and the support systems it's put in place for women. And with that, I think at this point, I think we can turn to Dee Reimold for our closing comments.
Before that, Dee, I noticed something, that all of you have this beautiful background. It looks like it's in celebration of Women's Month. But really, I just want to say that was a beautiful touch.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. On that note, we had last week, we had the opportunity for a number of the ATO women leaders to have a conversation with all of the managers, and we all had the same background, and it was a very powerful story, so I loved it. I just want to close out, Sophie, by thanking you and Lori and Beth and Ellie and Jennifer for taking the time. Again, I think I speak on behalf of everyone on this call, feel so honored to listen to these experiences and just sharing and really at the end of it, coming together to continue to encourage each other and take care of each other as a community. So thank you. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank Michelle Swearingen and Kate Knorr, who are on this call, for working, and Sophie, for all of your efforts to pull this together in pretty short order, and really appreciate for the members of the Iowa board that joined us today, and Iowa itself, for giving us an opportunity to tell our story. So with that, have a wonderful day, everyone, and we hope to see you again at a future Iowa event. Bye.
Thank you.